Hello, I'm C. Stephen Ellis, novelist, and this is my podcast, The Writer's Mind. Here we will discuss all aspects that relate to the craft, business, and creative side of writing. For more information or a transcript of this podcast, please go to my website, www.cstephenellis.com, and that's Stephen with a V. So focus your ears because it's time to step inside the writer's mind. Hi, and welcome to The Writer's Mind. Today we are talking with Kimberly O'Hara. Kimberly O'Hara, and I'm reading her bio right now, is an intuitive book and story coach. Now, I love that title, so we're going to have to definitely talk about that. She has also been a writer and a producer for the film industry. So we'll have to talk about your Hollywood years as well. And then you are now involved in doing, I don't see it on here, but we did quickly talk about it, meetups. And again, I want to talk about that. So first of all, Kimberly, welcome to The Writer's Mind.
Thank you for having me. So happy to be here today.
Thank you for having me or allowing me to do the interview. So tell me right off the bat, what is an intuitive book and story coach?
Absolutely. There are story editors and book editors, and I found that people that are writing books often come to me after they've been thinking about writing a book or trying to write a book on their own for a very long time. They've had many people tell them they should write books. They have maybe multiple drafts in, a file cabinet, depending on how far back it goes, or on their laptop if it's in current years. And they really just don't know how to either believe that they're a writer, that they have the right to make a book happen, and they have a lot of resistance, but they want this really, really, they want it. And so they come to me for that extra push. I give them structure. I give them a belief system in themselves. I help them to understand they are a writer. And then I go into parts of their story, often their memoirs, and help them see the bigger vision that they want to write about that was hard for them to see when they were just sitting in a room by themselves.
And so are these people then who have, they just have a problem getting started? They're sitting at the computer or their notepad and just nothing's happening, or they are easily distracted by, the mail's here, I must go get the mail, or things like that?
There is a gnawing knowingness about them that they carry around. It pervades all areas of their life and weighs them down. And when they come to me, they're ready to have a solution to that problem. Some people come to me, they're not 100% ready, and I send them to my monthly workshops where they can spend a couple hours with me, or they'll spend a private day with me where we'll break down their story and I help them see that it has potential in a future.
Now, would you say that most of these people are people who are wanting to write their story, their memoirs, their life?
I particularly enjoy working with memoir. It sometimes goes into business hybrid. I do have one client who's writing a libretto, and that's exciting.
Opera?
No, isn't a libretto for the play? I think that's the structure for a play, isn't
Oh, my ignorance. I always thought that a libretto was like the words to an opera, but
Oh God, I don't know.
I don't know.
I needed
could
a
be wrong too.
word for it because I kept saying, that script for your play, and I thought, well, that doesn't sound very eloquent. And I Googled, and it told me libretto. So I've run with libretto and said it quite publicly many times, and people have nodded. So either nobody knows or I'm right. I don't know.
You're probably right.
I'm pulling it off.
Besides, if you can't trust Google, who can you trust?
That's right. I mean,
Yeah.
I Google everything,
Okay.
like what is the size of a donut sprinkle? And I expect an answer.
So so this person is actually writing a play.
And it's about her life,
Okay.
but they're fictional characters. So there's that area that I'm starting to dabble in because I come from the movies. So I come from creating fictional characters, but the fictional characters I always loved were always characters that came from people's lives, something that they experienced. I mean, I guess that's true with most stories. They all are derivatives of something we've experienced. Fiction more so than memoir. So memoir is straight up, this is their life story and what they've experienced, and they feel like it's profound enough that it is not serving the better good of them just speaking it as speakers or recording a YouTube video. They want to put pen onto paper and they wanted to get it out to the masses in long form. You know, the book is long form. It's really you're able to tell the story in more detail.
Okay. And I will circle back to your Hollywood time because
Sure.
that was my background. So I always like to, talk about old Hollywood times.
Of
But
course. We could do that forever, right?
yeah, no kidding. But want to stay focused on memoirs for a minute because I mean that's something that is intensely personal. Even though I consider, people who write fiction, stories made up in their head, they're still coming from them. It's like they say in a dream, everything is you. You're the person
That's so
chasing
true.
you, you're the airplane that you're in, the bus, etc. So why isn't it like I don't know, especially in this political climate, why isn't it like the greatest act of indulgence to write a memoir?
Oh, well, there should be no indulgence about it. We all have voices, they all need to be heard. If someone believes that they have a story that's going to have an effect on someone else, even if it's an effect on them, I say often to my clients, write the memoir for you. My clients will often see transformation around chapter 6. I don't know what that is all about, but inevitably it's become a pattern that I can't ignore, that they can't ignore. At chapter 6, big things start to happen in their life. Opportunities start to come, big visions start to come for them. They change the course of their life because they're seeing, oh my gosh, I've done all this stuff. Look at me. I am more than I thought I was. I have more to say. I've had more life, and it all starts to become very cohesive. I work right now, and I'm not opposed to working with younger people, but primarily my clients are between their 40s and their 70s. So they're going through that really profound launching of that second stage of life. Let's look back at what we've done and let's think about what we're going to do. And the book and the memoir really helps to flesh that out. And then I also say, and you're going to have a book that could make you money, that could give you more opportunities, you could get more clients, all the possibilities of having the tangible book. So it's not indulgent. I don't see indulgency on in anything I've just said.
So I don't know why I think this, but I just get the sense that I suspect a lot of your clients, if not most of them, are women. Is that true?
I have had two male clients.
Okay.
Uh-huh. And one, he's very prolific, very working 60-hour work weeks with a private practice, writing in between clients, um, came up with a patent for a product in the middle of writing his book. I mean, just a force to be reckoned with, very passionate about what he does and what he's done. And again, a product of seeing, oh my God, wow, I know more than I really even thought I did, kind of epiphany. Um, but primarily they are women. I'm not opposed to working with anybody. They just need, when they come to me, to have a certain level of readiness to say, I'm going to write a book. Typically, I have them do it with me in the first draft in 12 weeks. And then they often hire me for the second draft. It just flows in, and we do that in 6 weeks. And the second draft is even more profound than the first draft because we've gotten all the gook out. We've done the dump, as I like to call it. And so it has to be someone willing to do that. I've just started a 12-month program for people that want to move a little slower because that's perfectly acceptable as well. Some people financially want to move slower, creatively want to move slower, but typically my clients come to me, they're ready to write a check, they're ready to write a book.
So, in terms of story coaching and and helping them bring out what it is they need to free themselves up so they can get it essentially out, what is the difference between that and let's say an editor? I mean, do you act
Sure.
as an editor later on in the process, or are you constantly editing? How does that work?
I want my clients to be led to a certain way that their voice is that I show them so that they can then start acclimating themselves to writing in that new way. If I constantly am editing them, then they're not going to have the practice to see how to do it themselves. So in the beginning of the process, I might do a little typing into their chapter, which I'm going to send back to them. I'll review it. I'll do some typing into the chapter. I'll send it back to them. But in the coaching call, I'll say, here's the reason why I wrote that sentence that way. It'll either be, I see that you have potential for a lot more humor. I'd like to see you explore that. Or sometimes there might be vagueness in a point that you're making. Do you see that possibility? Is that something that you'd be willing to explore? That way they start to catch themselves, and they'll say that to me in subsequent calls. They'll say, oh, I was about to write and I thought of you and I changed it. And it's exciting. I mean, anytime we learn how to do something, it's exciting. So if I did it for them, then they wouldn't have that joy and that thrill and that learning curve.
Okay, so this is
Yeah.
two follow-up questions then. I mean, at
Yeah.
some point, the book needs to go through an edit, just
Right.
a proofread and just content and, where you want to, much the way you edited the questions I originally sent you.
I'm sorry, I couldn't resist.
No, no, that's okay. But I mean, is that something you do, or do you actually hook them up with a third-party person to do that?
No, so my process is we do a 5-hour meeting before they start their book. And I don't know if it's because I come from so many collaborative meetings in the movie business, having to deal with 6 people with all different opinions. I can really, when I'm only talking to one person about their life, I can focus in really, really fast on storylines and through lines. So we have a pretty good structure and a developmental process before they even begin their book. So there's not a lot of structural editing that needs to be done. When we get into the second draft, I'm moving paragraphs around like crazy for them. Like
Okay.
I'm moving entire chapter 7 has become now chapter 2, and half of chapter 2 is now chapter 6. In the second draft, I get more heavy-handed with them, and they are appreciative of that because they're now needing to smooth out and write into me moving chunks around. Because I'll say, hey, this is amazing. Look, chapter 10 turned out differently than we expected. What a gift. Now we get to write chapter 11 to jump off of chapter 10. And sometimes chapter 12 is an all new chapter. So I love the second draft. It's a very different experience than the first draft. And then they go to a red line editor. The red line editor, and I have someone I've just started to work with for my clients, make sure all the sentences are complete.
So you may verb, tense, agreement, things like that.
Yeah.
Okay. So, so it seems to me, and correct me, which I know you will. It seems to me
Red
that
line.
that what you're really helping these people do, and this is something that all writers need, at least all the writers I've met, well, yeah, except for one, is to help silence that inner critic. That's the thing that we often, it's a parable in terms of stories. People will be sitting there typing away, and they'll go, "This is great, this is great," and then they'll go, "This is terrible, this is terrible. Why am I doing this? How do I stop this? Why am I wasting my time?" So, what tips do you have for just the general writing audience, not anyone in particular, but just the
Sure.
general writing audience, for silencing that inner critic so that you can just get the word out?
I don't know if I have any tip to ever silence the inner critic. It is always going to be in all areas of our lives. It's setting a foundation so that you have the tools to manage it when it comes up, laugh at it, and have it work in your favor. Because those inner critics sometimes are voices that you're not writing in. That can actually talk in a way that you think, I've had conversations with inner critics where I've been like, shut up, F you. And then the inner critic's like, and then I thought, hey, actually, my inner critic's actually a character. I'm going to develop that character. Next thing you know, I'm writing about some badass, chick in Oklahoma. I'm like, I don't know who that is. So you got to listen to these voices because they could be characters that you're suppressing. That's one thing that I've discovered. That gets more into TV and film, of course. The first thing I tell people, even when they come to my meetups and they don't even know if they're writers, as I say to them, the first thing you do when you walk in this room, even for 2 hours, is you say, I'm a professional writer just for now. I'm not
Well,
interested in anything else.
well, circling back though, uh, how do you help people who, get to that point with the inner critic so that the inner critic doesn't just stifle them completely and stop them from doing anything?
Well, I mean, that's where the coaching comes in. So I have a client who sat for 10 hours in front of her computer working on her chapter. And then we talked the next day, and she happened to mention this had happened. And I said, you call me on hour 1 next time.
Right.
So people don't realize that there's someone out there, like I'm there, right? So I'm not just there waiting for the chapter to arrive. You can call me at any time and say, I can't push through this. I've had clients call me up and say, I've written this 3 times and it just feels like it's the biggest pile of crap. And I'll remind them what we talked about in our coaching call, and they'll realize, oh my God, it's not, we'll turn the crap into, I guess there's a saying on that, and turn something into fertilizer. It's evading me at the moment, but
Okay.
some metaphor in there. But I show them what they're thinking actually they've forgotten. See, we forget, and that's when that's when those inner critics come in. They go, aha, they forgot how brilliant they were. So sometimes you just need someone to put you back on that course of your own brilliance. And that's why those continuing weekly conversations shore them up when they're out there. It's really dangerous to be out there on your own writing all the time. I mean, there are a lot of writers that do it, and they fight through a lot of those voices, I'm sure, from just having the skill and belief that they're professional writers, which I think is the number one mindset.
So I imagine I was just thinking about this the other day because I started book 3,
Wow,
and I
congrats.
thank you. But the thing
How do
is
you
that
do it?
how do I do it? That's a long story, and I'll be happy to be on your podcast and answer any questions about it. The thing is, though, is that what happened was I wrote that all important first paragraph, and when I wrote it, I was so happy. I was like, "Oh, this is fantastic!"
I'm
And
on my
so
way.
I look around the room, and there's nobody here. And the dogs are looking at me, but they don't know what's going on. So I call my wife. My wife is at her office, and she doesn't have time to listen to me. And so there was that moment of frustration where I had no one to share that excitement with. And I imagine that for you, especially with your clients, they call you when they have those aha moments or those great moments of excitement.
Well, I give them the permission to, whether they do or not. They're probably looking at their dogs and calling their spouses as well. But this is why I've started developing a program that creates more of a community. Because I feel like as working writers, we need a community where we can put on Facebook or make a call to an accountability partner. And that person is there for you that says, I'll listen to that paragraph you just wrote. That paragraph is amazing. No judgment, no criticism, just pure celebration. Let's like all just celebrate this. And I did a LinkedIn article recently about criticism. Is it okay if I just address that for 1 second? Because
Of
I think it's
course.
really important. I feel like a lot of unsolicited criticism is in the writing world, where people say, I was really great, but can I offer you, here's what I think about that. And it's like, not sure I really need that right now. Can we just celebrate that I just wrote? I mean, that's, you know, and I, in the movie and TV industry, well, the movie industry specifically, there was a lot of constructive criticism that dashed a lot of dreams. And I'm not going to be a dream dasher.
Dream Dasher, see movie executive. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I'm not going to be a dream dasher.
Yeah.
Who am I to tell somebody? So I want to create a community of celebration where people say, I just did this. I just did that. Is somebody, can I post this? They're all over the place on the internet, but it just seems like a lot of unstructured people just dumping their stuff, praying someone listens or reads. It's not ordered. And so I want to create a community of people that all know each other and are in a program with me that can do a book and celebrate.
Now, do you step outside of the memoir genre? Do you help people with fiction as well?
I have not yet.
Is that something you
So
want to do or
absolutely.
okay.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I have pipelines to the next step, which would be movies. And I have, if a memoir comes along that could be a great movie, I have a pipeline to that for clients. Not, there hasn't been one yet. And fiction would be something that would open those doors as well. So I'm really excited about that next part of my business. It's just I've been really focused on understanding what my clients need just in the writing space right now.
Okay. So, one of the things I noticed on your website was you talk about not being creative enough. What does that mean? Not being creative enough.
Well, people believe that they're not being creative enough. Like I'm not a creative enough person to write. Like, who am I to write? I'm like, they have this image that if they're not like wearing, a leather jacket and like carrying a beat up guitar and like contemplating life all day over like a cold latte that's sad, that they're not, if they're not in like Berlin, they're not creative, So that's that's
Okay.
that's a farce. We're all incredibly creative. We all have creativity inside of us in some way, and we all have a story inside of us. So people that want to write that story, they have enough creativity to do it. It just needs to be tapped into. This definition of creativity.
So, do you keep a journal? And do you encourage your clients to keep journals?
So I'm in a new journal mindset, and
A new journal mindset?
I'm in a
Okay.
new journal mindset. I have done away with the journaling as of now. I have clients that are on a 30-day no journal policy, who are reaching out to me. They're in journal withdrawal. And I've done this because they are using the journals now as crutches to keep writing the same codependent crap over and over and over again. And they're not writing their books.
Okay, I'm going to ask for a little more elaboration on that. What do you mean by codependent crap over and over again? This sounds something that's more about what's happening in their lives than necessarily what they're trying to put in a book. Is that correct?
Well, so when I wrote for movies and television, I know that I was held down by a lot of stuff from my past, family and history stuff. And I filled journal after journal after journal with the same, you know, angry stuff, right? And when I found those journals, I realized that I wasn't journaling. That was all great for that time in my life. But when I was ready to get really serious as a writer, I needed to put the writing into actually a tangible project. I needed to stop saying, well, I don't really want to write today, but I'm going to do a little journaling. And then I journal about like my mom, or I journal about like, the guy or whatever. And I'd be like, oh, I wrote. And it's not, I didn't write. I just tinkered, and nothing really, occasionally something would come out of it creatively, but you have to sit down. You have to open your laptop. You have to have a purpose and say, today I'm going to write on my book. I'm not going to journal. I'm going to write on my book. So when I see resistance with clients or people that aren't even clients yet, and I say, well, where have you been writing? They say, oh, well, I journal every day. I'm like, yeah, we probably need to stop that for a little while until you start writing your book.
So, are you familiar with God? I'm blanking on her name.
The,
Writing on
the artist, the artist way,
the
or
artist's way, writing on the left side of the brain, drawing on the left side of the brain, things like that. She does morning pages. She talks about morning
loved
pages.
morning pages.
So, how would you make the
Loved.
distinction between morning pages and journaling?
I did morning pages in an actual artist way class with this amazing woman called Kelly Morgan. She's also a writing coach here in Los Angeles. I have enormous amounts of respect for her. And I did a 6 week or 8 week course with her. And she's someone who should be on your show, by the way. I needed that at that time. I did not know who I was anymore as a writer. I did not know who I was as a creative. I was nowhere near being a book coach. I was coming out of the entertainment industry. So I needed to journal my way through that precipice big time. And those were organized journal entries. I mean, they had structure. I mean, the artist way is a very structured process of taking you through journaling. So it was journaling on another level. It wasn't just me journaling amok. It was journal with direction, right? And that brought me to more clarity for sure, right? So I urge anybody to do the artist way. I think it's fantastic.
First of all, I'm writing down the term journal amok because that's somehow I'm going to use that somewhere. I don't know where, but thank you for that.
You're welcome.
So then let's talk about your story. Let's talk about how arrived in this area. So you started out as a poor white child. I don't know what happened.
I was a poor white child, now that you
Okay.
mention it. Well, middle lower class. Well, I always wanted to be in movies. From the very, very, very beginning. My dad would take me to Charlie Chaplin. What do you call those when they play movie after movie after movie?
Marathons?
Marathons in Martha's Vineyard, actually, when I was a child, and it was one of the most exciting. I just remember it as one of my most. It just was so wonderful. So I had the bug really early. And so I always have been a reader, and I've always been a writer, and I went into the movie business. And then I didn't want to be in the movie business anymore. It wasn't, I didn't know that I didn't have like my soul in the movie business because I wasn't evolved in my own maturity yet. So I had to do some soul searching. I had to deal with some trauma that came up, and I had to write my own book about the trauma. And in the process of writing my own book about the trauma, like I talked about earlier in this interview, new doors started to open for me. I started to see a bigger vision for my life. Things stopped being black and white, movie or nothing. I got a business coach. I got a life coach. I would have never contemplated hiring those people when I was in the movie business. So we just didn't hire book coaches. You just dealt, like you just suffered, right?
Right.
And that's when someone said to me, you're going to be a book coach. And I thought, well, that sounds like a really good idea. I have no idea what that means. And it worked out. It worked out really, really well. So that's how I've come to this place.
Well, let's talk about your time in Hollywood. So what was that
Sure.
like? How did you get started? What did you do? I know you were a writer. I know you were a producer. What happened?
I did the chain of command from, intern to set PA to office PA for Ted Hope back when he was making his first movies with Hal Hartley in New York. And Ted Hope's a pretty well-known movie producer. And, production coordinator, line producer, production manager, till I finally was like, I want to run the show. I want to be in charge. And that's a really, raising money for movies so I did all the meetings and all the money raising and all the script finding, and had a couple stints working for a Hollywood producer, and made about 8 movies. Made one of Callista Flockhart's first movies. She was Ally McBeal, and worked with Tom Sadowski before he, now he's on Newsroom, and is well-known. Leslie Bibb before she was somebody. Anthony LaPaglia and Eric Stoltz, just top, amazing, talented people in these little independent movies. And had a big movie that was supposed to go. It was going to be my first $10 million picture with America Ferrera was going to be the star when she was on Ugly Betty. And the housing bubble burst. It was 2008. And the project went away, and I had a little kid. I was living in San Jose, and I just went, I can't do this anymore. Like, I can't do it anymore. And I just stopped for about 6 years.
Wow. I mean, living in San Jose and trying to keep a Hollywood career, that's
Oh,
pretty impressive.
it didn't work.
Oh, well,
I sold a couple scripts when I was there. I did do a bunch of writing. I did have someone buy a script from me. I did option another script. So I did keep writing through all of it. But yeah, I was really out of the loop.
Okay.
Really out of the
And so that was when you decided to, chuck Hollywood?
That's when I decided to chuck Hollywood and kind of wandered about for a while. I became an editor of a food magazine. And then I started. Then I got into some more personal recovery. That's when I started to realize that the insides were not healthy.
So now you've alluded to this a couple times, and I don't want to make you uncomfortable, and I don't want to, dig deeper if you don't want me to. But I'm curious, and I'm sure people listening are curious. What happened? What was the trauma that occurred in your life, and when did it occur?
Hmm. Well, and this is what my book's about, and it's oddly enough a journaling memoir. Because I did journal my way through recovery, and I teach people how to do that in this book. I was sexually abused when I was about, early years, till I was about 10, by my dad, and did not remember really. I mean, just I think I made an executive decision that was not going to be my story. But you cannot repress something that has happened to you that's that of that magnitude. It will seep into every area of your life. It will seep into your marriages. It will seep into your parenting. It will seep into your career. It'll seep into your. It will create addictions. So I had a dream one night, and I knew. And then once you open that door and you're willing to go to therapy, then it all, then you know it all. I mean, then it's like it's like you always knew, and you're like, oh my God. And there were a couple of times that I remember one really impactful. I had started writing the book about it, and my book's not about what was done to me because I didn't have that story at all. It's more about the lie that I told myself for so long, the other person that I lived as for so long. And the 3-year process of becoming the person I am today, who has one of the most amazing, incredible life full of love and joy, and how I got to that point. But someone said to me at one point when I was writing the book, you talk about my clients calling me and saying, oh, this is all, crap. And this isn't, no one cares. I had one day where I said to someone, what if none of this is real? What if I'm making all this up? And she said to me, Kim, it's not like it's an attention grabber. It's not like it makes you popular. It's not like something that someone makes up for attention. She said, nobody creates the story of incestual sexual abuse. Nobody. And she gave me that permission to keep going forward, and I'm really glad that I did.
Well, that's amazing. So I imagine that, as you said, the the initial trauma has infected your life in other ways, and that is kind of what your journey has been, sort
Right.
of dealing with all of the ancillary
Ancillary.
issue.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I imagine, so is that what you do with some of your clients when they come?
Sure.
So, I mean, it's almost like you're a book coach, but you're also helping them through their trauma.
Absolutely.
So, yeah, that must make you amazingly
Someone
popular.
once said it's like book therapy.
Okay, yeah, well, that's
Which I don't
interesting.
give any advice. I don't give it any advice. I just hold space, and I direct them towards how that can be written about. And we do find uh, like I said, some of my clients are writing about some pretty heavy stuff, and they can be funny. And, we need humor in this. I mean, dark needs light, and things happen to us in recovery from trauma that can be funny.
Yes, well, I suppose so.
You know,
Well, so then on your website, you have a word that I cannot pronounce. So I'm going to mangle it. Achalasia?
it's achalasia.
Achalasia. So what is achalasia?
So achalasia is a rare autoimmune disease that attacks your esophagus, and it makes your esophagus lose its motility. So it's not able to swallow food. Um, so
And you had this?
right when I started sexual abuse recovery, it hit out of nowhere. I know
Wow.
it's I wouldn't have believed there's a connection until I had clients writing about their trauma who started to have physical reactions too. Then I
Wow.
went, oh, the body. Louise Hay has this book called Heal Your Life, and it's this profound book about, well, she heals herself from cancer, which, that's a whole other conversation, but she talks about the different parts of the body and how they react. So it wasn't a shock to me that it was my voice that broke, basically.
I
And
mean,
that was my voice. And that
can
was
you
my voice in the movie business. That was my voice in every area.
can you eat?
I had a big surgery and I'm perfectly healed.
Oh, okay. So I mean,
Yeah.
this actually has to be corrected with surgery then.
It has to be corrected with surgery. Oh yeah. It
Wow.
has to. You can't swallow. My bed had to be on a tilt. I got down to like 105 pounds. And I was in denial. That's another thing is I didn't believe it. I thought I just had anxiety.
So you didn't believe that you were actually sick. You thought that, just all of this recovery was making you sick,
Exactly.
which though
Is
as
possible,
possible. Okay.
right? But when you've been abused, you already have a very low value for your body. So to go and take care of the body that carries you around all the time is a learning curve. So I had to realize that I neglected my body during this whole time for like 9 months before I went in to the doctor. And when I went into the doctor went, "Oh my God, have you looked in the mirror? How long has
Wow.
this been going on?" And
Do you
I
look
was
back
like,
at that as
"It's
a
been a while."
was that your
Oh, I
turning
would
point?
never. Oh, I would never. Oh, yeah, that was just such an epiphany. That was such an incredible epiphany. And I have a funny story about that. I went into the surgery and my mom came to help me, which was very healing. It's part of my story. She stayed in the hospital with me because I was in the hospital for about 4 days. And I told her, I said, I'm not going to hold back ever again any of my feelings. I'm never going to hold back my voice. I'm going to say everything how I feel. And I'm scared about the surgery. I'm going to make sure everybody knows. She's like, oh, okay, honey. That's great. And so when the anesthesiologist came, I'm like, I'm scared. I'm scared. I'm like telling him, I'm scared. What are you doing? I'm scared. And he dealt with it, put me out. She said, in the right when the surgery was over, they were wheeling me into recovery. I sat fully up, like completely under, sat fully up, and just started shouting, I'm scared and I want everyone to know. She said she's never seen a more freaked out post-op room of doctors and nurses. She said it was like they were looking at her like, what are you going to do? She's like, she said she was going to do this. So it's amazing how the body and the mind and our subconscious and the healing that we go through. I mean, this is just an example of all the different, look, I just told you about 10 stories in this short period of time. We've been on so many stories, and I'm just kind of an average girl. Like, everybody's got a lot of stories in them that they can talk about. And someone might hear this. They might have either been abused, they might have left the movie industry, they might have achalasia, and they might be like, oh, I better get to the doctor. I've been choking on food for 7 months. I mean, who knows?
Wow. I mean, yeah. I mean, I would hope so, honestly. I really would. So,
It's like,
I'm looking at my notes here, and so I see something about you have something called Story Meetup and Story Sessions, which are monthly workshops. And what
mm-hmm.
is that? Is this like a writers group or what?
Every month, and I just started it. I've done them periodically and gotten such an incredible response that I've been asked to do them every month. And they're 3 hours. They're in West LA, and it's for people to come in and test run their stories. So they come in. It's a right now it's usually about 6 to 8 people, and it's a community. It's that community that I'm talking about, where they come in and they talk about why they're there. They have hopes to be writers, so we immediately make sure they know they are writers. And I have them write about, I typically know who they are before they come in. They've already told me a little bit about them, so I can create writing prompts that work for everybody. And then when people share on their prompts, they get feedback from the group on what that would look like in a book.
Now, is this for clients only, or
This
is
is
this open
for
to everybody?
everybody. It's $97 to come.
Okay. All right. Well, that's
Yeah.
not bad.
Yeah,
Is
no,
that
it's and
90?
I'll
That's per visit or
that's
month or?
per workshop.
Okay, per workshop.
And that'll be on my website, which is www.astoryinside.com. There'll be a link now to every single date for people to pay in advance. So what was happening is I had people say, oh, I can't come on October. And they'd be like, let me know. And I'm writing down like individual names. Let Jennifer know in September. And I'm like, I can't do that anymore. I'm too busy. I'm like, I'll just send out one email with every single date and people can just click on them. Oh, I'm going to go in November. And then they sign up and they have their spot.
So, let's go to the end of this now. So, you have a client, they have finished their book, and you've read it. Everybody's in tears. Everybody loves the book. What next, and how are you involved in that? How do they get it out there?
So I'll try to be concise with this because I know we're almost out of time.
No, don't worry. We can. We're not locked into anything.
Okay. So sometimes clients will come to me and I'll ask them straight up, are you self-publishing or do you want to go for the big book publisher? Are you going for St. Martin's Press? Or do you want a
Right.
Kirkus Review? Or do you want to be a New York Times bestseller? They say yes. I say you should write a proposal then, because book agents and book editors, they're not going to read a book. They're
Right.
just not. So they'll hire me to write a proposal. And it's a similar thing. And then to writing the book, because you have to come up with all the chapters. And then when the book is done, it's their responsibility to go to agents and editors and sell their book. If I know somebody, because my network's always growing, I'm happy to make that introduction. Very happy to make that introduction. Because sometimes I'll have a percentage of it as well. So I have an incentive, of course, to sell it. Other people that come to me that self-publish, that's the end of the line for me. So I'll send them to a red line editor and then I'll give them some tips or some contacts. Here's someone I know that does, the Amazon upload really easily. Here's someone I know who makes an ebook. Do you need someone for a book cover? Do you need publicity photos? Do you need a book PR person? I just network out for them and they just take that advice, and that's just me giving advice. That's just free.
Got it. Okay, so I have actually, I have a couple last questions. Which means I have the penultimate question. How's that?
Oh, okay. I'm
Um,
scared now.
Tell me, and when I say tell me, tell us about your writing style. What do you do? Do you get up? Are you early? Are you late night? Do you dictate? Do you pen and pad? What do you do?
Oh boy, that's a hard question. ah, I think it depends on what I'm working on. So yesterday, I just wasn't feeling the motivation to do my own book proposal. So I went to the Beverly Hills Library, to the quiet room for 6 hours. And that helped me to get rid of the noise around my space. I love 5 in the morning. I think it's one of the most amazing times to write. I think 5 in the morning till 8 in the morning is just such a fertile time to write if you can do that every day. And for a long time when I was writing my book, I was up that time every single day. I have two little kids and I have a business I'm running. And so that doesn't become sustainable for a long period of time. So I think the best advice I would give to writers based on my practices is write every day, but don't be hard on yourself if you didn't do it at the exact time you were supposed to do. Because I get some of my best ideas on a Post-it in one sentence in my car, in line at the supermarket, at the auditorium watching my daughter's, recital. I'm like, just have paper with you, because I'll be like, oh my God, that's what that character's supposed to do. And I'll grab a pen and I'll write it down. And it's like, I could have written for 7 hours and not come up with that. So I think it's being open that writing is a fluid experience. We're not necessarily locked into sitting at our laptops every day and blaming ourselves if we don't do that. It's always, when you're a writer, it's always happening. It's always out there. And I think just trusting the flow of that. That's one thing I've learned as someone who sat in front of a computer for 8 hours and was like, I will write the winning screenplay. I see that that doesn't work anymore. That's
Yeah.
my personal opinion. Yeah.
Oh, okay. So then I always ask this question of my interviewees, or actually I say always, I'm just starting to ask questions like this, but it's, we're going to be wrapping it up. So my last question is there anything that I haven't asked you that you wanted to talk about, that you want to feel that you want to get out there?
Wow. Hmm. I don't think so. I think we've talked about a tremendous amount of material, both personal and professional. Um, I think that there's this belief that you have to have a certain mindset to be a creative person. Like you're supposed to be doing certain functions to be a creative person. And I think creativity is in everything and in everywhere. And one thing I did not do enough of when I worked as a screenwriter, and I try to do it now as a writer in writing a TV show or finishing my book, is I try to just get up out of my chair and go outside. And Anne Lamott just talked about this in her TED Talk. Look up and look at the trees and walk on the beach and go laugh with my kids and go eat a nice meal, because you got to be living life. You're missing life. It's like passing us by, and it's all part of the process. And then trust you're going to go back and sit down and do some more writing.
Great words to end it on. So tell
Yeah.
people how they can get in touch with you.
Well, I'd say go to my website, which is www.astoryinside.com, or you can email me at kim@astoryinside.com. And I do offer complimentary Story to Success discovery calls. They have a value of $397, but I'll offer them to callers or listeners today who are at that serious point of writing a book. And so that I'll open that up. They can email me, and we can talk a little bit on email. And so we can do I do a little questionnaire to see if they're ready, and then we can go from there.
That's perfect. Kimberly or Kim, thank you very, very much.
Thank you.